إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد, we start in the name of Allah the Most High, the one to whom belongs all praise, the one who controls all affairs, the one who gives, the one who takes, glorified and exalted is He. And we send peace and blessings upon the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and his family and his followers until the end of time. Ameen. My reflections in the khutbah today are going to be largely focused around prayer, and then in the first half. And in the second half, I'll make a comment as to kind of coming full circle in the concept of prayer. When we think about salah in Islam, particularly like the ritual prayer, we know its importance. We know that the prayer is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. We know that it is the one that repeats itself most often, that we do it multiple times per day, that it has certain conditions, and it has a certain way it's supposed to be carried out, and so on. We know that the Prophet ﷺ, from the earliest of obligations that he had, was the obligation of prayer. Even though the 5 daily prayers were not legislated until the time of Isra and Mi'raj, the Prophet ﷺ had very early on the obligation of prayer. And Jibreel alayhi salam came to him and he taught him it. And one of the ways that we know this is that, as we have mentioned before, one of the opening early verses of Islam is Ya ayyuhal muzammil qumil layla illa qalila. O you who was wrapped in garments, referring to those early incidents of the revelation beginning, stand in the night and pray. So we know that the Prophet ﷺ had this prayer very early on. We know that he ﷺ also taught it to his wife, for example, Khadija radiallahu anha, that to his followers as well, and that they used to pray in the mornings and the evenings. We know that the Prophet ﷺ put such great emphasis on the salah that he said that it is the dividing line between belief and disbelief. That the dividing line between belief and disbelief, the sign of the believer is that the believer stops to pray. One thing I actually picked up from a Christian that I thought was very beautiful is that sometimes what we think about for prayer is it works for salah and for zakat. It works for both of them. So if we start with zakat, you say, for example, that we have all this money that we have, right? And out of the wealth that we accumulate, if we've accumulated a certain amount, then we pay 2.5% of zakat on that wealth, right? And part of what we're saying in a spiritual way, when we pay that 2.5%, is that, Ya Allah, when I, by myself, have 100% of my wealth, I am able to do less with it than I am able to do with 97.5% of my wealth and you. Meaning, when I do what you ask me to do, Ya Allah, and I put this money into charity, then this money, even though I have less of it, with you helping me, I have more. The same thing actually works with prayer. That in prayer, you can think about prayer almost like a zakat on your time. That every single day we're given a new opportunity to worship Allah. Every single day we're given a new opportunity to do good. Every single day we're given a new opportunity to shine a light in the face of darkness. And for every single moment that we have and the ability that we have and that we are able to do that, then Allah is asking us a very small amount back to Him for what He has given us, which is to stand in the prayer for those few minutes on each day. And the prayer is not just a means by which we connect to Allah, but it is also a means that enables us and empowers us to do what we need to do when we're not formally connecting to Allah. Which is to say what? Which is to say that the Prophet ﷺ did not, at the beginning of Revelation, decide to live his entire existence in the cave. This is very important. Very, very important. The Prophet ﷺ did not decide to live his entire existence in the cave. In fact, he didn't really have a whole lot of time to go back to the cave after that opening revelation. right? He went down into the city, and he is now living with the people. And perhaps you have seen images. Now you can go online and you can find images of what it looks like to be in the cave of Hira and look down on the city of Mecca, right? The Prophet ﷺ literally descends into the city. To do what? To call people to God, to work righteousness, to clarify truth from falsehood, to be a symbol of what is good and right and true in existence. Not in the cave, but to be down there mixing with the people. But what it is that experience in the cave is what enables him to do what he needs to do with the people. When we go and we look even how the 5 prayers were legislated, the 5 prayers were legislated with the elevation to the heavens of the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet ﷺ did not stay in the heavens. He came back down and he had to deliver the message to the people. But he was given that great gift of the 5 daily prayers, which then gives us the strength to be able to do what we need to do. So it is not simply that we are constantly in acts of worship, but also that we live our lives according to the teachings of Islam. One of the great scholars of Islam, Muhammad ibn Hasan al-Shaybani, one of the top students of Imam al-A'zam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he was asked why he didn't write a book in spirituality and personal development and character development, all of these kind of things. He said, I did. They said, really? We didn't see it. He said, I wrote the book on the laws of financial transactions. And if you follow the laws of your financial transactions, then you've acted upon spirituality. Like you've achieved it. Right? If you can go into the marketplace, no, this is halal, this is haram, be just. And of course, he's following the guidance of his teacher. Imam Abu Hanifa was known to be very just in the marketplace. Very, very just. And to the point that people sometimes would think that he was joking with them. The way that he went one time to buy a piece of garment from a woman. He told her, how much does this cost? She said, 100. He said, no, it's worth more than that. Imagine going into the marketplace and doing this. He said, it's worth more than that. She said, 200. He said, no, it's still worth more than that. She said, why are you messing around with me? Why are you making fun of me? Why are you doing this to me? He said, it's worth more. She said 300. He said, it's worth more. She said 400. He said, it's worth more. She said 500. He said, okay, I'll take it. This is the way that Abu Hanifa was. So his student is saying, if you're able to live like that, then that means that you have accomplished some level of spiritual understanding in a very real way, in a very practical way. So the prayer is not just something that we do in the masjid, or we do in the nights of Columbus, or we do in our homes, right? Or we do in our workplaces. But the prayer is something that actually evolves the way that we are, and the way that we exist, and how it is that we engage with creation. Right? The prayer has all of these impacts. So then the question becomes, how is it that we can better our prayer? And I'll tie in the aspect of how we live our lives also when it comes to the end. So what are some things that we can do to better our prayer? Okay? What are some things that we can do? We start, and they're in logical order, so it'll help you remember, inshallah. We start in order to better our prayer before the prayer actually happens. One of the traditions of the Prophet ﷺ was that even if he was in a state of wudu, he was already in a state of wudu, he would oftentimes go and make wudu again before he would pray. So what is that? Why are you doing that? Because when you go and you make the wudu is an act of worship itself. Independent act of worship itself. I wash in a particular way, and I remember Allah, and then I know that when the water drips from these limbs, there's sins that are being lost as the water drips from these limbs. And I say afterwards that, oh Allah, make me from the tawabin and make me from the mutatahhirin. You know, that those who, they seek your forgiveness and those who are purified. So all of this is an act of worship, but that act of worship also brings us into a position where we're more in a mental and spiritual state to come in front of the prayer. So we're preparing ourselves for the prayer before we even come into it. So number one is to focus on the wudu, to make sure that it's there. If we have the opportunity to refresh it, just because it will help us to get into, it's like the pregame. It's the warm-up before the prayer. Okay? Number two is that when we come to the place of prayer, we should choose carefully where we pray. So number two is about what we do when we're going about to pray. So one of those is that we be careful where we choose to pray. If we're praying at work, we're praying on the go, whatever it might be, one of the ways to think about this is to think about it before the time. So as I go into my day, I think about where and when am I going to pray today. Some people have work the same every day. Some people have school the same every day. Some people move around. They have to drive, they have to commute, they have to go see a client, whatever it might be. But today, when I go into this day, where am I going to pray and when am I going to pray? This question, which helps us right then at that moment where I'm going in, what am I going to do? How do I do? The other thing is to make sure that we have a means by which to know the direction of the Qibla. Now, people generally depend on their phones, and for the most part in the city, you can get away with doing that. But if you're going to be traveling or something, you have to consider it, right? Another thing is to carry something that we can pray on. If we don't feel comfortable praying in wherever place we're going to be, we should make sure that we have something with us. Maybe you get a little pocket prayer rope, maybe you keep one in your car, you keep one in your bag, whatever it might be. Right? All of this then is going into the prayer itself. When we go into the prayer itself, we think and we remind ourselves, what is it that I'm doing right now? So we should already be in that mindset because we renewed the wudu. But also then when we come, we refresh again. What is it that I'm going into right now? What is my niyyah? What is my intention? And do I have presence of that intention? Hulur al-niyyah should be present. I'm praying Dhuhr right now. I'm praying Asr right now. I'm praying Maghrib right now. Whatever it is, and we refocus and we go into the prayer. So number 2 is to prepare the space of the prayer itself. Number 3 is that we should reconnect and remind ourselves of the concept and statement of Allahu Akbar. There are a number of very extremely profound things that we say on a daily basis that we don't usually pause to think about because they're normal to us. So Allahu Akbar is actually an incredible statement, that God is greater than everything. God is greater, technically. And in Arabic, this is like an expression to indicate that He is greater than everything. Anything you put after Akbar, God is greater. God is greater than all of those things. It's an amazing statement. SubhanAllah, God is glorified and exalted beyond any sort of imperfection. It's an amazing statement. Alhamdulillah, that all praise and gratitude and thanks is deserving to Allah. Also an amazing statement. You know another one? La ilaha illallah. I know a brother now, he's an imam, he's a sheikh, I guess. You could give him that title. He studied in Azhar, he did other things. He became a Muslim when he was 16. Not even knowing any Muslims. He was 16, he was in his high school classroom, and they came across this section on Muslims and Islamic civilization and so on. And he said he opened this page in the textbook, and across the page, there was, it was like a timeline or something, and across it, it said there is no God but one God. And he said, I looked at that and I thought, man, that's so true. The absolute truth of that statement immediately hit him. He said, that's totally true. He went home, he asked his grandmother, he said, do you know anything about Muslims? Like, what is it about Muslims? What do they believe? Do you have a Quran? Because they had it in the class, they were covering some things, right? She's like, yeah, actually I have half of a Quran in the basement, in the attic. She had half of a Quran, saved from one of her relatives or something who happened to be touched a Muslim somewhere. He brought half the Quran down, he's like, when I started reading it, I couldn't put it down. I finished the whole thing in one night. Because of what? The profoundness of the statement of La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. So when we go into prayer, we should remind ourselves of how profound the statement of Allahu Akbar is. That Allah is greater than everything. So then when we come to the prayer, and we're prepared for the prayer, and we come to the space of prayer, and we raise our hands, and we say Allahu Akbar, that's everything else is out. Allah is greater than my job, my family, my work, my debts, the things that I owe, my schedule that I didn't fix, the anger that I have with my family, the problem that I have with my children, whatever it might be, Allahu Akbar. Allah is greater than all of those things. Absolute cutoff from everything else. But you know what's amazing? Allah knows how hard it is to focus on one thing. Right? He knows how hard it is for us. So how many times do we say Allahu Akbar in prayer? It's for everything, every single part of prayer. In order to move to the next, we say Allahu Akbar. So what are we doing when we connect to Allahu Akbar at the beginning? We're also giving ourselves a trigger throughout the prayer to come back to what it is we're doing. So I might say Allahu Akbar, I start praying. By the time I get to Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, I'm gone from Allahu Akbar. I'm just totally gone. Because I've been reading Fatiha every day of my life for my entire life. So I got to Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, and then I went to whatever my issue was with my family, and then next thing I know, I'm saying Ameen. And I just like then I got stuck for a second because I didn't know which surah I was supposed to read next. Then as soon as I started, I go into autopilot again, right? But then what happens as soon as you finish all of that? Allahu Akbar. Okay, wait a second. Allah is greater than all of those things that just distracted me. So you go back. Then you Sami Allah, then Allahu Akbar. So it's a trigger throughout the prayer to remind us that we should be coming back to the focus of the prayer, which is to submit to Allah. Okay, number 3. Number 4 is that we learn what we say in prayer. I mean, subhanAllah, we pray every single day of our lives for years upon years, and we don't know what we say. Many of us, probably, maybe a majority of us, don't actually know what we're saying in prayer. We don't know what Allahu Akbar means. We don't know what Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen means. We don't know what Iyaka na'budu wa Iyaka nasta'een means. We read surahs, maybe 4 or 5 of them, probably every single day for our lives. We don't know what they mean. So taking the time out to study these things and learn what they mean is extremely important. Because then it also helps us to focus on what we're doing in the prayer. So that's number 4. Number 5 is that we should reconnect with sujood. This will be the last one. Should reconnect with sujood. Isn't it amazing that in the most abased position, we say the most glorified statement, Subhana Rabbiyal A'la. Glorified is Allah, who is the Most High. And we're in the lowest position we can possibly be in. You know what one of the hardest things to do when you're a new Muslim is? Make sujood. Malcolm talks about this in his autobiography. How hard it is to get on your knees and pray. How hard it is to get down and make sujood. Why? Because in non-Muslim existence, you don't put your head on the ground. Outside, even for us, outside of prayer, would I put my head on the ground? No. That's not something you really do, especially face down, right? That's how people get executed. You don't do that in real life. It's an extremely vulnerable position. But why do we put ourselves in that extremely vulnerable position? Because glorified is Allah, the Most High. And if I'm going to glorify the Most High, I want to be in the most vulnerable position I can possibly be in. Right? So this is also very, very important to connect. Because sujood also, as the Prophet ﷺ said, is the closest position that the servant is to their Lord. So in the absolute most debased position, that's the closest position we have to Allah. So these 5 things are ways to get more connected to prayer. In the second half, we'll talk about part of the reason why that matters. But again, to review them, to take the wudu seriously ahead of time, to prepare the place that we're going to pray in, to connect with the statement of Allahu Akbar, to know what it is that we read, to learn that, and number 5 is to connect with sujood more deeply. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد. Prayer is a very huge part of our identity. And the question of identity is a question that we should always be thinking about. If you want to know somewhere in the Quran where you can get a good glimpse on what our identity is and how we should think about ourselves, go to the last 2 verses of Surah Al-Hajj. We don't have time to go into them right now. But the last 2 verses of Surah Al-Hajj, the 22nd chapter of the Quran. Go to them and you'll see the entire breakdown. Allah says, O you who believe, make ruku' and make sujood and worship your Lord. وَفْعَلُوا الْخَيْرَ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ. And do good so that you can be successful. Then he goes afterwards and he says, and struggle in the way of Allah. And this is the way of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And Allah has called you Muslims. And He called you that before as well. And He goes through this whole discourse of who we are. The main point here to conclude on is that in the beginning of those verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He commands the believers to do the portions of prayer, make ruku', make sujood, bow in your prayer, make prostration, worship Allah, then what does He say after that? وَفْعَلُوا الْخَيْرَ. And do good. Do good. It's not just that there's one part and there's not the other. Like I said in the beginning, the prayer is what connects us to Allah, and it gives us the spiritual capacity and fortitude to do good. It's not easy. When you do good, when you dedicate yourself to serving others, when you dedicate yourself to taking the moral high ground, when you dedicate yourself to not being about yourself, you do good, but it's not easy. But you know what? When you do good, you'll find more sweetness in that prayer. You find more sweetness in that prayer too. Because then you really realize why you need to get connected. Because the whole purpose of existence is more connected. And you realize then why that worship is so important. Right? So these things, Allah puts them together for a reason. Do these things, these portions of prayer. And do that good so that you can be successful. Not just in this life, but in the next. But we should remember always that as we connect and reconnect to our prayer, we also connect and reconnect to our mission of being sources of good in the world. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us of our sins and our shortcomings and accept from us our deeds. Oh Allah, forgive us, enter us into paradise and keep us away from your punishment and displeasure. Oh Allah, help those who are struggling and those who are going through all types of hardship. Give food to those who are hungry, give shelter to those who are shelterless, give victory to those who are oppressed. Oh Allah, give us knowledge that benefits us and benefit us from that which you have taught us. Help us to be sources of good and righteousness and light in everything that we do. اللهم اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وإسرافنا في أمرنا وثبت أقدامنا. اللهم بارك فينا وبيننا وألف بين قلوبنا وصفوفنا. اللهم كن معنا ولا تكن علينا. وانصر إخواننا المستضعفين في كل مكان. وانصر إخواننا المستضعفين في كل مكان. افتح علينا فتح العالمين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وعملا صالحا. اللهم تقبل منا واعف عنا وآتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا وأقيموا الصلاة.